Study with Master Notes. Today we will discuss MAG6 American Literature Unit 27 Wallace Stevens 1879 to 1955. Okay, his life and works I will describe in brief. If you go through my previous videos, you can get all of my videos based upon MAG6, MAG15 and MAG3. Also your city certificate in teaching of English. Okay, so I request you all to please like, share and subscribe, and if you have any doubt, please comment in the comment box. Okay, so we will go today Wallace Stevens 1879 to 1955. Okay, here is the all about Wallace Stevens life and works, which I will describe one by one. So here it is the structure, objectives, life and work, Sunday morning test, background, critical appreciation, notes, the Emperor of Ice Cream test, background and critical appreciation, notes, the idea of order at Key West text, background and critical appreciation, notes, let us sum up, glossary, questions and further reading. So here it is the objectives. So every unit has its own objective, we already know. In this unit we study the life and works of Wallace Stevens and three of his poems, Sunday Morning, the Emperor of Ice Cream and the idea of order at Key West in detail. Stevens' closeness to painting, the way in which his beliefs in art, poetry, painting, sculpture, music as a new religion, a kind of replacement for the loss of faith in institutionalized religion, is analyzed. The role of the poet and the role of the poet's imagination is also one of Stevens' pet concerns. Okay, so here it is the life and works. So already we have discussed the Emperor of Ice Cream, the idea of order at Key West and the Sunday morning. So these 3 points we should discuss in this chapter. Okay, so Stevens' closeness to painting. So Stevens' closeness to painting means, so Stevens was very fond of to painting, like poetry, painting, sculpture and music as a new religion. So here it is the main key point, the Stevens liking, that is poetry, painting, sculpture, music as a new religion and a kind of replacement for the loss of faith in institutionalized religion is analyzed. Okay, then we will go life and works. On October 2 or on 2nd October 1879, the man who was to become one of the 6 or 7 foremost poets writing in the English language was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, USA. He was descended of stubborn and taciturn farmer stock. Okay, so what do you mean by stubborn and taciturn? Okay, so we will know what is the meaning of stubborn and taciturn. Okay, the foremost poets writing in the English language was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, USA. So he was from Pennsylvania, USA. He was descended of stubborn and taciturn farmer stock. Taciturn means talkative, okay, and stubborn means rigid. Farmer stock. His father was a school teacher and an attorney. In 1897, Wallace enrolled at Harvard as an undergraduate pre-sale student. There he was an occasional poet and short story writer. His pieces, the poetry marking the influence of Keats and Tennyson, appearing in the Harvard Monthly and the Harvard Advocate. At Harvard, he came to know the poet-philosopher George Santayana, and his works made him believe that poetry has a quasi-religious function in an age of skepticism and disbelief. Okay? At Harvard, he came to know the poet-philosopher George Santayana, and his works made him believe that poetry has a quasi-religious function in an age of skepticism and disbelief. So here it is the main key point, you can note down. Okay, so he was very much influenced by Keats and Tennyson and appearing in Harvard Monthly and the Harvard Advocate, and he came to know the poet philosopher George Santayana. Okay, George Santayana and his works made him believe that poetry has a quasi-religious function. Okay, then perhaps because his father had told him to put work and study above his dreams. In 1901, Wallace became not a writer starving in a grade but a well-paid reporter for the New York Herald Tribune. He did not consider himself a success as a journalist, and so, taking his father's advice, he enrolled in the New York Law School in 1901 and was admitted to the New York State Bar in 1904. He was, however, not a success as a lawyer either, so in 1908 joined the New York office of a bonding company and married Elsie V. Mole the following year. In 1911, Stevens' father died, and in the following year, his mother. In September 1914, in the Trend, and in November 1914, in Harriet Monroe's Poetry, a magazine of verse, came the first publication of Stevens' mature work. Okay. So in September 1914 in the Trend and in November 1914 in Harriet Monroe's Poetry, a magazine of verse, came the first publication of Stevens' mature work. Okay. So Harry Monroe's Poetry, a magazine of verse, came the first publication of Stevens' mature work. In 1916, okay, in 1916, Stevens joined the legal staff of the Hartford Accident and Indemnity Company. Stevens joined the legal staff of the Hartford Accident and Indemnity Company, an insurance company. He would work for the rest of his life and made Hartford, Connecticut his lifelong home. In 1915 to 17, he wrote 3 experimental one-act plays. His first volumes of poems, Harmonium, appeared in 1923. Earlier, his poems had appeared only in the little magazines like Harriet Monroe's Poetry and Alfred Kremberg's Others. These poems were the result of the double life Stevens led, a lawyer working for an insurance company by day, a poet by night, on weekends and during the summers while his wife, of delicate health, vacationed in the country. He was a peripheral figure in the literary scene, a close professional mind, but only that of poets William Carlos Williams and Marianne Moore. He wrote and received letters, but his reticence and his business kept him away from the center of literary activity. He wrote and received letters, but his reticence and his business kept him away from the center of literary activity. In 1924, his daughter Holly was born, and for the next 6 years, Stevens wrote almost nothing. In the mid-30s, he became economically secure. In 1934, he became the vice president of the Hartford Accident and Indemnity Company, and 4 important collections of his verse appeared in quick succession. Ideas of Order in 1935, Old Clover in 1936, The Man with the Blue Guitar in 1937, and Parts of a World in 1942. In 1946, he became a member of the National Institute of Arts and Letters. Transport to Summer appeared in 1947. In the 40s, he gave occasional readings and delivered lectures at Ivy League institutions like Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and Columbia. The Auras of Autumn appeared in 1950. In the same year, he was awarded the Bollingen Prize for Poetry. In the following year, his acclaimed book of essays, The Necessary Angel, Essays on Reality and the Imagination, appeared in 1954. His collected poems. The following year, he was awarded the prestigious Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and the National Book Award. So here it is the main key point. He was awarded prestigious Pulitzer Prize for Poetry and National Book Award. In 2nd August of the same year, he died. Okay. So here you can see the preposition the preposition here is used in August to or in 2nd August. Okay, so here you can see there is no on 2nd August, it's not there. Okay, in 2nd August. Okay, in 2nd August of the same year he died. 2 years later appeared his opus posthumous. Okay, 2 years later appeared his opus posthumous. So what do you mean by posthumous? Means he died earlier and his writing or publication was came to appear after his dying. Okay, that is opus posthumous. Steven's poetry dealt with the problem of the role of the imagination in relation to the reality. The poet's role is to speak to the elite but also to help people live their lives. How so? Because the poet gives to life the supreme fictions without which we are unable to conceive it. It creates a world of poetry indistinguishable from the world in which we live, or I ought to say, no doubt, from the world in which we shall come to live, the necessary angel. Okay, so it creates a world of poetry indistinguishable from the world in which we live, or I ought to say, no doubt, from the world in which we shall come to live. Okay, the necessary angel, the wordings of the necessary angel. So here it is the Sunday morning. We will discuss about the poem. So text of the poem, third, Sunday morning. Complacences of the peignoir and late. Coffee and oranges in a sunny chair, and the green freedom of a cockatoo upon a rock mingled to dissipate the holy hush of ancient sacrifice. She dreams a little and she feels the dark encroachment of that old catastrophe as a calm darkness among water lights. The pungent oranges and bright green wings seem things in some procession of the dead, winding across wide water without sound. The day is like wide water without sound, stilled for the passing of a dreaming feet over the seas to silent Palestine, dominion of the blood and sepulchre. Okay, sepulchre, dominion of blood and sepulchre. Why should she give her bounty to the dead? What is divinity if it can come only in silent shadows and in dreams? Shall she not find in comforts of the sun, in pungent fruit and bright green wings, or else in any balm or beauty of the earth, things to be cherished like the thought of heaven? Divinity must live within herself, passions of rain or moods in falling snow. Grievings in loneliness are unsubdued. Emotions when the forest blooms gusty. Emotions on wet roads on autumn nights. All pleasures and all pains remembering the bow of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. So here is the third stanza. Jove in the clouds had his inhuman birth. No mother suckled him, no sweet land gave large mannered motions to his meaty mind. He moved among us as a muttering king. Magnificent would move among his hands until our blood commingling virginal with heaven brought such requital to desire. The very hints discerned it in a star. Shall our blood fall, or shall it come to be the blood of paradise, and shall the earth seem all of paradise that we shall know? The sky will be much friendlier than now, a part of labor and a part of pain, and nest in glory in enduring love, not this dividing and indifferent blue. She says, I am content when vacant birds, before they fly, taste the reality of misty fields by their sweet questionings. But when the birds are gone and their one fields return no more, where then is paradise? There is not any haunt of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave, neither the golden underground nor Rizal, melodious where spirits get them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm. removed on heaven's seal that has endured. As April's green endures or will endure like a remembrance of awakened birds, or her desire for June and evening tipped by the consummation of Sallow's wings. She says, but in contentment I shall feel the need of some imperishable bliss. Death is the mother of beauty, hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and our desires, although she strews the leaves of sure obliteration on our paths. The path seek sorrow took the many paths where triumph rang its brassy phrase, or love whispered a little out of tenderness. She makes the willows shiver in the sun for maidens who were went to sit and gaze upon the grass relinquished to their feet. She causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. The maidens taste and stay, impatient in the littering leaves. Is there no change of death in paradise? Does ripe fruit never fall, or do the bugs hang always heavy in that perfect sky, unchanging, yet so like our perishing earth, with rivers like our own that seek for seas? They never find the same receding source that never touch with inarticulate pang. Why set the pier upon those river banks, or spice the source with odors of the plum? At last, that they should wear our collars there, the silken wavings of our afternoons, and pick the stings of our insipid lotus. Death is the mother of beauty mystical, within which burning bosom we devise our earthly mother waiting sleeplessly. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men shall chant in orgy on a summer morn their boisterous devotion to the sun, not as a god, but as a god might be. Naked among them, like a savage source, their chant shall be a chant of paradise. Out of their blood returning to the sky, and in their chant shall enter, voice by voice, the windy lake wherein their Lord delights, the tree like seraphim, and echoing hills that coy among themselves long afterward. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish and of summer moon, and whence they came and whither they shall go, the dew upon their feet shall manifest. She hears upon that water without sound a voice that cries, the tomb in Palestine is not the porch of spirits lingering. It is the grave of Jesus where he lay. We live in an old chaos of the sun, or old dependency of day and night, or island solitude, unsponsored free of that wide water inescapable. Deer walk upon our mountains, and the quail whistle about us their spontaneous cries. Sweet berries ripen in the wilderness and in the isolation of the sky. At evening, casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness on extended wings. Background of poem. This is long, complex poem which appeared first in Harriet Monroe's poetry in 1915, but that was only stanzas 1, 8, 4, 5 and 7, printed in the order mentioned, scrambled by Stevens himself, 1, 8, 4, 5 and 7. So here you should memorize the order of the stanzas of the poem. You can get questions from NET exam also. By Wallace Stevens poems, the stanzas were in the order of 1, 8, 4, 5 and 7. Okay. So, in 1923, the poem was reprinted, but this time in its entirety and with stanzas in the original order in which Stevens composed them. The poem is a slow meditation on death and on the conflicting claims of Christianity and paganism, and their varied interpretation on the possibility of life after death. In the title Sunday Morning, there is a pun on Sunday, a day of the week, which perhaps got its name from the natural sun, and on son implying Christ, the Son of God. Stevens in this latest 250 said that the poem was an unconscious expression of paganism, and that it is not just a woman's but any person's meditation on religion and the meaning of life. that is Norton 1151, Meditation on Religion and the Meaning of Life. The poem was inspired, however, by his mother's death in 1912. His mother believed in Christianity, while Stevens did not. He remembered in his journal how his mother would drink fruit juice and assert her belief in immortality in her last days. Stevens also wrote to his wife that he thought that the grief of his mother's death could be dissipated. He uses the same word in this poem, Elfo, by pleasurable things. He asked his wife to indulge in sweet breads, sweet fruits, sweet everything. Norton 1151. The poem may even be read in the form of dialogue between a believer and a non-believer who alternately take turns to express their point of view rather than as a single meditation within a single mind. The poem may even be read in a form of dialogue between a believer and a non-believer who alternately take turns to express their point of view rather than as a single meditation within a single mind. The poem may even be read in the form of dialogue within a believer and a non-believer who alternately take turns to express their point of view rather than as a single meditation within a single mind. Okay? Between a believer and non-believer who alternately take turns to express their point of view rather than as a single meditation within a single mind. Believer and non-believer who alternately take turns to express their point of view rather than as a single meditation within a single mind. Critical appreciation. In the first stanza, Stevens imagines a woman sitting in her dressing gown in her study and thinking about her approaching death or perhaps even death in general. In the first stanza, Stevens imagines a woman sitting in her dressing gown in her study and thinking about her approaching death or perhaps even death in general. However, these brooding thoughts are dissipated or lessened by the pungent torrents, the sunny chair, and the wonderful free green wings of the cockatoo embroidered upon a rug. In the first stanza, Stevens imagines a woman sitting in her dressing gown in her study and thinking about her approaching death or perhaps even death in general. However, these brooding thoughts are dissipated or lessened by pungent torrents, or sunny chair, and the wonderful free green wings of the cockatoo embroidered upon a rug. Okay. So first stanza, Stevens imagines a woman sitting in her dressing gown in her study and thinking about her approaching death or perhaps even death in general. However, these brooding thoughts are dissipated or lessened by the pungent oranges and sunny chair and the wonderful free green wings of the cockatoo embroidered upon a rug. All these colorful markers of life surround the woman as she meditates on death. Okay. So all these colorful markers. So which are the colorful markers? Wallace described in his poem. Okay. So here it is the pungent orange. Pungent oranges, the sunny chair, one free green wings of cockatoo embroidered upon a rug. So these are the lives around the woman as she meditates on death. Note also the combination of the Christian in the reference to Palestine and the pagan in the phrase ancient sacrifice, and in the subtle reference to the procession of the dead. That is line 10. The pagan references are reminiscent of the scene kids described in the Ode on a Grecian urn, a sacrifice that belongs to a pagan civilization. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadest thou that heifer lowing at the skies? Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadest thou that heifer lowing at the skies? The second stanza may either be the woman herself playing devil's advocate and asserting an opposing point of view, or it could be another persona expressing something that is closer to the poet's own point of view. The second stanza may either be the woman herself playing devil's advocate. Okay, the second stanza may either be the woman herself playing devil's advocate and asserting an opposing point of view, or it could be another persona expressing something that is closer to the poet's own point of view. advocate asserting an opposing point of view, or it could be another persona expressing something that is close to the poet's own point of view. This stanza describes all the various things, objects in life that are to be cherished as much as the thought of the heaven. The sun, fruit, green, wings, rain, snow, forest blooms, and autumn nights. Note that the object described combine effects of gladness and of grief, all pleasures and all pains. Okay. Note that the object described combine effects of gladness and grief, all pleasures and all planes. Divinity must be sought within the human being rather than outside. That is in hope of God or Jesus or a life in heaven. In the third stanza, the poet juxtaposes the pagan concept of divinity. Jove, who had no human mother and no homeland, whose thoughts were vast and who moved among humans as a martyring king. With the Christian concept of divinity, Jesus was born of woman, that is Virgin Mary, and born in particular location Bethlehem. Okay. So the poet wants to suggest that the change from the pagan to the Christian concept of divinity came about through a human desire, and the desire that very human blood cannot fail us now. If we can accept the earth as all of paradise that we shall know, then the sky, meaning nature, and the world of nature will seem much friendlier. Okay, accept the earth all of paradise that we shall know, L41, then the sky, meaning nature, and the world of nature will seem much friendlier, L42. That is in line 42. It is described that if we can only accept the earth as all paradise that we shall know, then the sky, meaning the nature and world of nature, will so much friendlier. There will be no division between human toil and human sorrow and the world of nature. After all, nature too moves through various seasons, as Stevens has reminded us in the previous stanza. Of course, Stevens is much more tentative. Note the three questions, line 39 to 41, and then I make him out to be in this paraphrase. In the first two lines of this lovely stanza that follows, the woman says she still feels the need in the midst of earth's pleasures of some imperishable bliss, some endless joy. In the remaining 13 lines of the stanza, the poet's other persona explains in how beauty can only come from transience. Okay, so in the remaining 13, still feels a need in the midst of earth's pleasure, in some imperishable bliss, some endless joy. In the remaining 13 lines of the stanza, the poet's other persona explains how beauty can only come from transience. In remaining 13 lines of stanza, the poet's other persona explains how beauty can only come from transience. Death is the mother of beauty. In other words, it is not the imperishable things that are joyous, but the perishable ones. We find things in life beautiful because they pass away so soon. We find things in life beautiful because they pass away so soon. In other words, it is not the imperishable things that are joyous, but the perishable ones. We find things in life beautiful because they pass away so soon. Okay, so it is imperishable things that are joyous, but the perishable ones. We find things in life beautiful because they pass away so soon. And then the poet's other persona describes the many scenes of life through which death reminds us that she is the mother of beauty, scenes of earthly sorrow. We find things in life because they pass away so soon. And then the poet's other persona describes the many scenes of life through which death reminds us that she is the mother of beauty, scenes of earthly sorrow. And then the poet's other persona describes the many scenes of life through which death reminds us that she is the mother of beauty, scenes of earthly sorrow. Reminds us that she is the mother of beauty, scenes of earthly sorrow, of earthly triumph and earthly tenderness. The last 5 lines of stanza, this persona elaborates on a pastoral scene. Okay, the earthly triumph and earthly tenderness, earthly sorrow. The last 5 lines of stanza, the persona elaborates on a pastoral scene in which boys pile the disregarded plate. The last 5 lines of stanza, the persona elaborates on a pastoral scene in which boys pile the disregarded plate with ripe new plums and pears. Okay, the last 5 lines of stanza, the persona elaborates on a pastoral scene in which boys pile the disregarded plate with ripe new plums and pears in order to woo the maidens. Images of the love and death beautifully coexist. The disregarded plate has been handed down by long dead ancestors. They are piled with fresh fruit symbolizing life. The maidens are young and yet they stay impassioned, passionately moved so as to lose their way in the littering autumn leaves, representing decay and the passage of time. What gives this verse its resonance are the rich echoes from the earlier poets like Andrew Marvell. To his coy mistress, the garden, the picture of little Tissy in a prospect of flowers, Keats' ode and melancholy ode to nightingale, and Gerard Manley Hopkins' spring and fall. All these poets managed to combine the secular pre-Christian elements of pastoral with the darker Christian hints of the Garden of Eden and the fall. According to Christian, Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden because they disobeyed God, and from then on, human beings who had till then been immortal became mortal, and eternal spring of the Garden of Eden changed into the cycle of seasons. Decay and death entered human lives. Stevens follows in the footsteps of poets mentioned and still gives his poem an unmistakably modern ring by juxtaposing words like boy and plate with older words like maidens. The next stanza tries to imagine what paradise would be like, where everything would be so perfect, nothing would decay, and yet there would be no satisfaction because time and change would not exist. The ripe fruit would never fall, the boughs would always hang heavy, the sky would be like the sky we know, only unchanging. Okay, satisfaction because time and change would not exist, the ripe fruit would never fall, the boughs would always hang heavy, the sky would like the sky we know, only unchanging. Paradise thus becomes a less satisfying copy of the earth because there is no change. Okay, so the next stanza tries to imagine what paradise would be like, where everything would be so perfect, nothing would decay, and yet there would be no satisfaction because time and change would not exist. The ripe fruit would never fall, the boughs would always hang heavy, the sky would be like the sky we know, only unchanging. Paradise thus becomes a less satisfying copy of the earth because there is no change. Usually it is common to argue the reverse, but again Stevens follow Keats' precedent in the ode on a Grecian on. Paradise thus becomes a less satisfying copy of the earth because there is no change. Usually it is common to argue the reverse, but again Stevens follows Keats' precedent in the ode on a Grecian on. The scene of the lovers depicted on the on is beautiful. The youths remain forever young, yet they are cold, frozen in an attitude of never consummated desire. Paradise thus becomes a less satisfying copy of earth because there is no change. Usually it is common to argue the reverse, but again Stevens follows Keats' precedent in the ode on a Grecian on. The scene of the lovers depicted on the on is beautiful. The youths remain forever young, yet they are cold, frozen in an attitude of never consummated desire. She cannot fade, thou hast not the bliss. Forever wilt thou love, and she be fair. In stanza 7, Stevens pictures a pagan celebration of life and nature as a sort of unorganized religion. What the men are celebrating is really their own energy. They also know that this earth and their fellowship and all the heaven that they need. The sun, the wind, the trees, these are all the gods they need. They have no need of imperishable bliss that the woman had longed for in stanza 5. What is fugitive, short lived about life is what appeals to them. In the last stanza, Stevens describes the woman as hearing a soundless voice telling her that Jesus was just a human being, not a god. Palestine marks his grave. It is not the location of some mystical experience. We have not been created by God but have sprung from chaos, and this is where our complete freedom lies. The last 7 lines of stanza give a marvelous description of the wonderful variety of the birds, the trees, the fruits, and the waters that surround us. No doubt Stevens was drawing inspiration from the grand New England scenery surrounding him. The last three lines are once again reminiscent of Keats, this time his ode to autumn. The red raised whistles from a garden trout and gathering sallows twitter in the skies. Keats is describing the mellow fruitfulness of autumn, but the ode ends with a hint of winter in the air. The sallows are about to leave England for warmer countries. The last line in the poem, downward to darkness on extended wings. Downward to darkness on extended wings. Here it is the main key point. You can note down. Darkness, downward, downward to darkness on extended wings. Here you can see the last line in this poem, downward to darkness on extended wings, provides a model or a pattern for the woman whose death is approaching. She should face the darkness, meaning death, squarely, unafraid. Her wings, signifying hope and spiritedness, should be aloft. Okay. So here is the notes. Line 1, Pagnor dressing gown. Okay. What do you mean by Pagnor? It means dressing gown. Old catastrophe. This could refer to death in general. The woman's particular approaching death, to the crucifixion of Christ, or even to the Christian doctrine of the fall. Okay. So means old catastrophe means could refer to the death in general. Okay. The woman's particular approaching death. Then silent Palestine or dominion of the blood and sepulchre. Palestine was the place where Jesus was sacrificed and the location of many other bloody deaths in the name of religion. That is silent Palestine or dominion of the blood and sepulchre. Zov, this is the Roman name of the Greek god Zeus, the supreme deity in both Greek and Roman myth. Requital, repayment or reward. Hints, star, farm laborers. Okay, what do you mean by hint star? That is farm laborers. This could be a reference to the shepherds who saw the star of Bethlehem that signaled the birth of Jesus. Chimera, a mythical hybrid creature with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. Here it represents difficult to prove beliefs in other words. Well, what do you mean by chimera? A mythical hybrid creature with a lion's head, a goat's body, and a serpent's tail. Golden underground, isle or melodious. Perhaps referring to pre-Christian Greek or Roman visualization of life after death in the isles of the blessed. Okay. So golden underground, isle or melodious. Perhaps referring to the pre-Christian Greek or Roman visualization of life after death in the isles of the blessed. In this stanza, Stevens imagines the woman as saying that she is content with life while it lasts, but what about when it ends? Shouldn't one have some hope to sustain one in that case? Birds and misty fields are all very well, but what about when the birds fly away and their warm fleets do not return? To which question the poet seems to reply that no concept of the life thereafter can endure. Satisfy as do earthly pleasures, the simple pleasures of April green, the warmth of June and Sallow's wings. In this stanza, Stevens imagines the woman as saying that she is content with life while it lasts, but what about when it ends? Shouldn't one have some hope to sustain one in that case? Birds and misty fields are all very well, and what about when the birds fly away and their warm fields do not return? To which question the poet seems to reply that no concept of the life hereafter can endure, or satisfy as do earthly pleasures, the simple pleasures of April green, the warmth of June and Sallow's wings. Disregarded plate. Stevens himself explained that this referred to the silver plated dinner service that was handed down from generation to generation in a family. Disregarded refers to the disuse into which things fall that have been possessed for a long time. Disregarded refers to the disuse into which things fall that have been possessed for a long time. I mean, therefore, that the death releases and renews. What the old have come to disregard, the young inherit and make use of. Line 74, disregarded plate. Stevens himself explained that this referred to the silver plated dinner service that was handed down from generation to generation in a family. Disregarded refers to the disuse into which things fall that have been possessed for a long time. I mean, therefore, that death releases and renews. What the old have come to disregard, the young inherit and make use of. There are a number of personifications in this verse. Death is personified as the mother of beauty, sorrow is described as sick, triumph is personified as a sort of army general or even the conductor of a band, ringing his brassy phrase, and love is personified as a person tenderly whispering to his or her beloved. Okay, there are a number of personification in this verse. The death is personified as the mother of beauty. Sorrow is described as sick. Triumph is personified as a sort of army general or even the conductor of a band, ringing his brassy phrase. And the love is personified as a person tenderly whispering to his or her beloved. These personifications help bring abstract concept alive in the reader's mind. Inarticulate pang, a sorrow that cannot be expressed. Silken, silky, pick the strings of her insipid lutes, play our stringed musical instruments, lutes which are ordinary humdrum. Pick the strings of our insipid lutes, play our stringed musical instruments, lutes which are ordinary humdrum. Death is the mother sleeplessly, two very difficult lines which probably mean that we create an image of death, an abstraction which we can never completely understand until we experience it, and then it's too late in the image of our earthly mortal mothers sleeplessly for the children to come home, waiting sleeplessly for the children to come home, mortal mothers and waiting sleeplessly for their children to come home. Supple and turbulent, easily bent, referring to the bodies of the main and rioters. Okay, supple and turbulent, easily bent, referring to the bodies of the main and rioters. Chant in orgy, sing wildly together in the secret rite in celebration of a particular god. Chant in orgy, sing wildly together in a secret rite in celebration of a particular god. This word is usually used with reference to Bacchus, the Greek god of wine. Celebration in his honor were marked by drinking, singing, and wild dancing. Line 94. Not as a god, savage source, the sun is being whispered by these men not as a god but as a primitive source of energy, not every different from themselves. Seraphim, Hebrew, are high ranking angels or heavenly creatures gifted with love and associated with light and purity. The modern word seraph is derived from this fellowship, fellow feeling, or friendship. The dew upon manifest. Stevens in a letter explained this line thus: life is as fugitive as dew upon the feet of men dancing in the dew. Selected letters to 15 Norton 1154. Manifest so, chaos, matter without form. The Greek writer Hesiod in his Theogony 8th century BC writes that chaos was the source of creation. This of course runs counter to the Bible belief that God created everything including Adam, the first man in 7 days Genesis. Ambiguous undulations, the movement of the pigeon's wings does not have a fixed meaning. It may be interpreted in a variety of ways. Okay, so these are all about Sunday morning. Then in my next video we will go the emperor of ice cream. So please viewers, like, share and subscribe and comment. Thank you viewers.